Hello, hello. There's someone here. Welcome to the stream. This won't be a very long stream, but I wanted to wanted to keep my schedule and actually stream on Mondays, like I planned to. And today I am going to implement some things that were missing from the game last time. If you are new, we are developing Infectious Void, and I will just continue where I left off by doing some things that are actually don't have much to do with the gameplay directly, but like there are some preparations I need to do, and these things are having to do with loading and saving data. And I want to write some stuff so that I can use it and actually reload a level without losing everything that I did as a player. So we need to have that in order to actually have a persistent playable game. And if we do that later, it will fall on our feet pretty quickly. What I did was I created a singleton, which is caring about the persistent data. And we already have some classes. We have our persistent save game, which holds a player position, a current level, a writing date, and restorable objects, which I hope I can store as I plan to. And we have sound settings. So this is just a container for settings in general. And we have a save game method. This is something that comes into play later, because for now it's completely fine to just save data in a persistent data path, and I plan to use the user path for that. So, but for later, if we actually want to write our save data to a different system, we need to prepare it to be able to to not only write a file, but maybe write a JSON string and then send it to an API. So we have a list of save games and a list of autosaves and a container for our settings. And what we need to do is, if we don't have a save game, we need to first add one, and then at the end be able to write the save game down. And if we then load the game, we need to load our file. So we need something at first, even if it's only a placeholder, to actually trigger our save game. And I will add this to an object where I'm not sure it belongs to, but for now it shouldn't be an issue. Or we will just map it to a button to have something to trigger save game. Yeah, I think I will just start with something very simple. Or just add it there. Well, it can't hurt. Whoops. So let's just add it somewhere down here after the damage calculations. And let's say if it actually, we have this still left from the Ludum Dare, the settings is save game. We might want to use this later, but it does not a lot. It just moves a transform or sets a transform that we can teleport back to, and it does not have. Hey Wolfen, welcome to the stream. Cool to have you here. I'm currently writing some stuff. I need to get started a bit and then get into the flow. The nasty thing is I need to write some basic save game functionality, which is kind of annoying for me and everyone else, but I think it's worth to have it as early as possible. Yeah, I thought so, that you are Nav Sim in disguise. The name sounded so familiar, and I was wondering how you found yourself, how you found your way here to my stream, from all people. I haven't sent it to you, and you have found me by surprise. Oh, okay, cool. It's nice to know that you can see that I'm streaming when I'm in Discord. That's cool. Makes it easier for me. So where did I leave this? It's called add save game, write save game. So these are just basic debug functions, but I need to have some point where I can actually trigger this. Does not contain. Oh, of course. This is the wrong class. So, how are you doing? Are you still at work? Okay, and then we can, yeah, at work. Poor guy. I am trying to do manages persistent data, add save game. New. So this might not even be necessary to actually give it a save game, because we are going to add one. And we can prepare something like add custom save game, which is necessary. Yeah, cool game coding can also be very uncool game coding if you're doing pretty boring stuff and instead of working on like the actual gameplay mechanics. But in general, it's more fun than many other coding work you can do. So I can completely understand. Okay, so this custom save game can have a persistent save game save. And if you just want to add a save game, okay, we have a add a save game and we have an extra void for autosave game. I'm just so scared to or the main reason I don't yet believe in my code so much, because I'm so afraid of designing a save game system that does not work, because the save game system of Fumiko worked, but in when I was working for it for the Xbox One port, it became kind of difficult to combine the system I made for the game with the asynchronous style that the save games for the Xbox One are expected to be. And this time I would like to make it a bit different. So I don't know yet if I want to have for example, an ever-growing list of save games like I began writing here, or if I want to cap it. But I can do this with a list. So the thing is, if you're having an asynchronous like an API where you need to store your save games in and load your save games from, the more save games you have, the longer it takes to load the stuff. And if you look at games like Skyrim, they just write files on PC, and then your save game folder grows to gigabytes in size. And I actually don't know how they manage that on a console. But maybe they have a completely different save game system for that. So if we want to write a save game, we will add Yep. And the save games themselves can also grow a lot in size, but that's just, well, an effect of having and storing all the objects you can kick around in the game. So we are creating the save, which will be a new persistent save game. And we want to write the player position, which will be player interfaces, instance, player, no, not player components, get player, which is the game object of the player, and we cannot access, of course. Okay. And we want to have the current level, which will be scene manager. And to use that, we need to be using the Unity engine, not editor, scene management. We need to get the name of the active scene, and for the writing date we will use new date. Wow. I actually need to take a look at what I need to include for date time, or if it is included by default. Yeah, system date time now. So I'm not sure why he is a type, not a namespace. Okay. So maybe it's just system. Yep, no, I can use datetime now. But I want to initialize that with a interesting. Okay, then I will take a look. There's a lot to pull. So since I already worked on a lot of mechanics for the Xbox One release, I want to just take a look at my save game class for that version and be able to copy and paste some things. So today it's a very unconcentrated stream for me, but we will see if it gets better or not. It looks like a lot of time has passed since I last updated this local branch of Xbox. Be right back in a minute. Okay, I'm back. There's someone at the door. Okay. So my problem was that I actually forgot how to properly use datetime now, which is a big sign for my current state, for the state of my brain today, which actually isn't able to concentrate or focus on things. Game. Okay. So this monstrum of a script has all these save game stuff in it, in addition to a lot of other game relevant stuff like the menu. And it's a real mess. This is just like things that grow over time and just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And I really hated to having to write and hack the Xbox saving mechanism in there. So daytime now to string seems to be what I wanted. And I also wanted to know if I did something else with it. So this is the line I was looking for. Sometimes you want the daytime, if you're storing it as a string, you want it to be formatted in a specific way. But it seems to be fine as is. Wonderful. And we have the restorable objects, which will be not a new list of restorable objects, but we want to populate that list here. Okay, and this is why the indentation wasn't working. So we want a list of restorable objects, or we can initialize it like that, and then we can try to try to use a function that gives us all game objects carrying a restorable object. So what I want to do is scan the scene that I'm in for all restorable objects, put them in the list, and then decode or encode that whole object in JSON and write it to a file. So Unity gives us the opportunity to find game objects with a tag and game objects of a type. So an easy way to do this, but a probably tedious way, would be to give the restorable objects a tag and give them a tag called restorable object, and then you can find all game objects by tag. This will probably give me only the active game objects, not the inactive ones. But it wouldn't be a big problem, because the restorable objects would always be active while the interactable object won't be. So maybe I will just do this to make it easier for me to find them. My hope was that if you have a game object, and this game object would be like restorable objects, and then all restorable objects are in there, you can just use this parent object and then get all components in children, which will give you all instances of restorable object, which basically does the same, but it will likely give you everything in there regardless of its current activation state. But it forces you to always have all restorable objects inside this parent. Which maybe isn't a bad idea in general, because I had an interactable objects container up here, which I deactivated because it's outdated. But in general, it's always a good idea to have all interactable objects, things that are like real game objects, inside some container where they are easily findable and adjustable. So maybe I will just go with that, and for that I won't give this a tag. I want to not use that many tags this time. So we will give this one here, manages persistent data. Okay, what I wanted to do is predefine it, like I have this hero container predefined in here. But since we are going to change the scene, and since our restorable object will change over time, I will give this one a tag. And always, when I need to have it, I will find it by tag. This will return me an array of restorable object. So we will need to create an array of a restorable object instead of restorable object settings, and then we can iterate through that. And it doesn't allow us to use the restorable objects. A directory does not contain a definition for restorable objects, and no extension method of restorable objects accepting a first argument of type directory. Wow. A directory is actually something very different, and it's because it auto-completed the my sentence in the wrong way. And Visual Studio Code likes to do that a lot. I'm very happy to have IntelliSense, but it tries to remember or guess what I want to use, and it's often not what I... So what it did here is I'm typing save, and instead of using the save from above, it automatically jumps to the third option. And that's why I got the save game directory. So for all restorable objects in scene, we want to have the save game get all these settings from all restorable objects. And to remember which object the settings came from, we likely need to introduce something like an ID. But it would need to be persistent for the whole game. And we could use some kind of trick to... I'm actually wondering why this sword, it's a restorable object, interactable object, why this is actually all the child objects are in some strange position. Okay, this is fine. But this isn't. And this isn't too. And these are. And we need to move the sword to its original position. So it probably doesn't matter if we have an additional sword container over it, and I will just name this one here sword, and it's an interactable object, and it has a restorable object script, and it's inside restorable objects. What I currently think about using is taking the position of the object and using it to generate the ID, so that the initial starting position of an object is the unique ID. But we will have to combine it with something else that also uniquely identifies our object, because we might want to use 00 or the same starting position for multiple objects. So this won't be enough, sadly. And it looks like there is a Unity internal object that we can use for exactly that, which would be really cool. Let's put this in the settings. We will have a public int, or it is a public int because we want to access this, and it will be, if we can use that. We can't. I think we need to, of course, our integer will be our unique ID or a UID, and it will be object get. It will this game object get instance ID, but it might be that, of course, this is not this. We need to have this as 0 or not identified, and we will tell our settings UID to be game object get instance ID. And so the object will always have a unique identifier. What I need to know now if this identifier will be persistent along all sessions of the game, and if it is something I can rely on to find my game object again and reapply the settings. We need to have an object reference. So we left off in interactable object here, where we had a triggered action and we wanted to add a save game with nothing, and we have written this in the wrong way. So if we use this to add a save game, we could trigger this. But for now, I want to know if our UID, which is now 11,572, if it is that number again. And it is, which is nice. This could make things a lot easier, because I can safely find objects again. I wish I had this kind of comfort in the RPG Maker back then. This is like a really cool feature, because it makes it easy for me to do that. So I can just grab the settings and add the restorable objects right here. Yeah, and these settings is the only thing that we want to save. And we want to add this to our persistent save games, which is just called save games. And again, Visual Studio Code auto-completing aggressively. So now we can create save games, but only in a temporary manner, and add them to our list. And we can introduce like a maximum number of save games in this later on. So what I want to do, just so that I can actually write a save game, if the save game method is set to a single file, we want to use write to blob to use our container for save games and turn it into a file somehow. And it would be best to combine it with the other containers as well, because write to blob needs to create like a one single file containing everything we need. And for that, it is best if we transform everything to JSON. And I will take a look again at my Xbox One scripts. Which I can't show, but the thing with save games was that they needed to be I needed to turn them into a data map, and this is like just it contains a byte array, and to create a byte array from my save games I needed to turn it into JSON, and then turn the JSON to a string, and then the string into bytes. And I kind of want to do the same thing here to be prepared for every API I'm going to use. And for that I'm using something. There is a proper JSON converter in the in Unity included already, but since I already bought this, I'm going to check. Well, let's hope it doesn't. Asset store, credit card. It's called something JSON. I'm afraid to click the account button here on stream. So we'll see. There's this JSON.NET for Unity, which is free. Not even sure which one I bought. Paid only. Well, I will take this here and check my account page to see which one I actually bought. My lists, notifications, JSON.NET for Unity, which looks pretty free right now. I'm not sure if I actually, maybe I didn't buy this. Maybe I just was clever enough to use something that is freely available. But let's check this really quick. It has it imports some DLLs for ahead of time compilation for standalone and for Windows. So this ahead of time compilation is kind of nice if you're developing for consoles, because they need that to make it short. And then it's nice to have something that works with all three. And the Unity included JSON converting is also able to be used in ahead of time compilation. But the great thing about the JSON.NET was that it had some additional options to use when serializing objects to JSON. And I needed that to serialize enums in a right way. So if you have an enum like directory, and it consists of 3 words, and it's just basically what the compiler sees is like an enum named directory, and it's just 1, 2, and 3. And if you're saving that as JSON, it will be saved like something like that. And that wasn't so great. So I can tell the converter with JSON.NET to use something to use a filter called string enum converter, and then it will convert these to strings and make them reusable so that they get converted back into enums when I decode my JSON string. So we have imported JSON.NET, and to use it we are going to add Newtonsoft JSON and use it on our save game blob. So we want to have a string so maybe we want these to be inside of a class. I don't know if data is already is available. We can just use that, and it will contain our 3 lists, or 2 lists and 1 thing. And then we can, it will be something like data. And it doesn't warn me that I'm overwriting things, so I can use this. And we want to have a string called serialized data, which will be JSON convert serialize object. I'm so happy I already did that. Data. And we want that to be using a new Newtonsoft JSON converters string enum converter, just to be sure that if we are saving enums in our save games, we will be using that and we won't lose them on decoding. As soon as we have serialized that, I guess this is okay to use. I might want to string get data as string. Oops. And this will return JSON. This will actually return what I just wrote. So that I can reuse that. So our string serialized data will be get data as string. And we want this to have a void write file, and we want a content and a file name and a directory. And then we will update this. To not be used. I wanted to have this like this save game directory where I predefine where the save games will be saved, but it doesn't actually matter because I want these directories, but I want to, if I write this blob, I want like write file, serialized data, save game, or data. Let's just call this save games for now, bin, just to make it look like an important file. The file ending actually doesn't matter, and we are giving it like a directory called persistent data path, something like that. And I want to rename that because persistent data path will be our local application data, which is app data roaming or app data local on Windows and local share on Linux. And I want to make use of that this time. And well, now it's gone. I had it open. I had a website open where there was Unity 3D local application data path. So that's part of the where I could actually just fetch the string of the application data. There it is. Folders paths win Mac, and it is called local application data. So if our directory equal this directory equals directory local application data, we want file name, well, to write equals file name, and if it is local application data, file to write will be application path wait a minute. So these are from, not from application, these are from system, environment, get folder path, system, environment, special folder, application, local application data. And we want that to be combined with file to write. And we should write that to our debug and see what it actually does. So I want the interactable object to be able to write our save game, just force it to be written or added. So we want the triggered action to be able to add this, and we want that to be at the very end of our execution to be able to save the game after the object has been triggered. And if our settings are write save game, we want manages persistent data instance write save games, which will trigger write to blob because our save game method is single file, and write to blob will get the data, transform it into a JSON string and write our file and give us, it won't write the file, it will give us a file name. Oh hey! hey, sorry. Hey Zeriver. It might be that it's a Fumiko song, it's a song by me, and I used some of my own songs for the game. So it might be that you will stumble upon some Fumiko soundtrack. Okay, so we are going to get the actual path and file that we are going to write, just to make sure if we need to like add some slashes and things to the path. And we also, when we are at it, we want to debug log our content too. And we will use that. Okay, directory does not contain a definition for local application data, which should be an issue with the renaming. Well, it has. It has renamed. So this is strange if I'm using the Visual Studio Code. Oh, okay. So this time around it has recompiled. And we want the source to write to restorable. We did that last time. We are storing its position, which we don't really need. And we are storing the activation state. But in addition to all that, we want now to be able to add a save game and write a save game. So let's try this out. I'm not sure if I'm in the mood for Slay the Spire. I have looked at some games before I started the stream, and I really couldn't decide on what I'm going to play. So we will see. So we got a null reference exception. Triggered action. Let's check this out. Our write save games has a null reference exception. And not more. Triggered action. Godly Corp. Oh yeah, I can take a look at this. Is the demo you sent me still the current one? So if I click the Dropbox link, will it take me to a proper and new download of the game, or will you send me a new one so that I can try it out? Okay, so write save games gives me another reference exception, which is kind of strange because it doesn't do a lot. And the null okay, yeah, there's a null reference exception which comes 2 times and it doesn't tell me where it happens. So great thing. Thank you, Unity, for being cooperative. I think the old link should be good since my current build is sometimes unstable. What? Unstable builds? My games don't have errors. They're all working fine. Well, I don't know. I don't know what's happening. So I have add save game and write save game. And it's doing the same thing. Okay, cool, it's good to hear. Oh, there was a lot of crashing and bug fixing on the Xbox One release. There's still a bug in that release, but I don't know if it actually happens in the real version of the game. And it might also be something that just me as a developer being overly correct about how I implement things will actually notice. Okay, we have this wonderful null reference exception error, and it doesn't even call the function. And for 1 second I felt really stupid writing debug log at the top of a void and calling the void, and I get a null reference exception and debug log doesn't not get called. But it seems like it was worth trying that out to actually see that this is total bollocks, what is happening here. So, and also the null reference exception happens in add save game already. Okay, because it's skipping that. So we are adding a save game, and we are creating a save game where we get our current position, we get our current level, our writing date. No, I'm not planning to use Unreal Engine in the future. I see no real reason to switch to Unreal for me, for what I am doing, the games I'm doing. So now it would be nice if the game would actually tell me which error this save game script is causing. And it's also not even calling the function. You are unsure? Yeah, there might be a day somewhere in the future where I actually think that Unreal Engine would be better for the use case. But as long as I'm not really doing high fidelity graphics and like a big open world game where you really need to have a highly optimized, very performant and good looking engine like Unreal, I think Unity is just fine. And if you put in the work, I think you can do almost everything with Unity. I've seen some great great looking prototypes shared on our gamedev and our Unity 3D, which were looking amazing. And I think if you know your stuffs, the engine won't matter, and you will be able to just create the looks and gameplay you want. So we have the settings at save game, and we have a manages persistent data instance. Of course. Okay. Since this is a singleton and we are trying to access it, we also need to have the singleton attached to our singleton carrier to be able to reuse, or to be able to just use it at all. So it's still giving me another reference exception, but I think what I did there was actually necessary to go forward. But now I get an actually more meaningful godly corp. Yeah, they sure do. And now I have an actual error message on line 50, and it's going to add something to save games, and it's failing because save games needs to be created first, as same as autosaves and our settings. This isn't a list, so we can just not use that and give it just a new persistent settings, which is more sane. And now we should be able to see a success in adding our save game to the list of save games. Still another reference exception. Still at the same line, which is interesting. So we have this data, save games add, save, and a completely new list, and public data, which isn't initialized. Five viewers, welcome to the stream, people who just arrived. Okay, and now we finally were able to get our save game. This is like what I wanted to see. This is our JSON string containing a list of save games, which contains our current position, our current level, which is Dungeon A. It contains a writing date, which is really necessary to have in a save game. And we have a list of restorable objects, which are these little things here. Our sword is currently the only restorable object, and it has a stored position, which is the same position that we are seeing here, and it has a unique ID, and our autosave list is empty, and our settings list setting is also empty. And our path that we are going to write the save games in will be home, test, local, share, save games bin, and that's why I wanted to debug this first. We need to add an additional slash at the end of that. But this is actually making me very happy with the bad concentration I have today. It's nice to see that this is actually working out. So we need to use this, and this will be our file to write. Interestingly, we will need to create a new folder for that too, which will be Infectious void. Hey, welcome to the stream, Ash1K0. Nice to have you here. So we need to create a special folder for that, the Infectious void folder, which will be our game folder. The interesting thing about that is normally home test local share contains a Unity folder and some settings inside of that, and on Windows it forces you to write your stuff inside the Unity folder, but on Linux it doesn't, which is interesting, and I don't know if this allows Unity developers to do some havoc in the player directories, but in the end, if you are running a game, you're always at risk of a shady developer just doing stuff on your machine, so I shouldn't be surprised by being able to access the file systems on a basic level. So we are trying to, I hope that it creates this folder for us, we will see, and since we want to create a file, we need to create a file stream, and I will also just grab this from the original Fumiko version, which will be in source game manages game. Oops. And we want to have this saved settings file here, and we want this one read settings. We want save game info. Load save game. No, I want write save game binary. So we want our file attributes to be normal and check if the file exists, and if it exists, just get the attributes from that file. I think at some point I needed to do that. And if it is not read only, okay, so that's for that. We will write our stream to that file, and I will copy and paste this really quick and paste this here. Oh, wonderful, absolutely wonderful. Let's undo this, and I think with Vim I can just hold down CTRL and have a proper copy and paste. We need to be using something like using system.io, whoops, for file management. Yeah, it's copy and pasting programming. I will just use the game I already made and reskin it and copy the code over, and then I'm done. That's game development for you. So we are now able to use this file attributes class, and if our file isn't read-only, we can use this binary formatter. Tasty copy pasta. If we are able to use this, we can write a file, and for the binary formatter we will likely have to use something else. Oh god, I really hate this file and what it has become for Fumiko. This is like a real mess, because it's the game manager, but it contains the menu and the save game organizer, and it's just a big mess. So we are going to use system runtime serialization formatters binary to be able to use this wonderful function. So copy and pasting again, and we are now able to serialize our... Do we even need to serialize that? I could just I will do that. I will serialize a string and it will be our content. And if I'm serializing it, it will be a binary. So if I wanted to, I really like if you're, yeah, it's a giant wall of text. That's what you get for overdosing. Yeah. So if you have too many games you are stealing your code from, then you're just copy and pasting everything you have you can find inside your game, and then you get a file like this. Don't do this, guys. Don't do this at home. You will just get a big mess of a file with just nothing, just gives you errors. Don't copy and paste random stuff from the internet, kids. It's dangerous. But for now, I'm trying to write a save game, and we will check if it actually writes down our content. And if we see the file created, we can actually already add our load save games function, which will try to read. Okay, let's go into this file again. We are going to find. So the way this file actually works for me is by being able to search things, and then if I write something like that, I can find the load save game void, and then I can find my way around this file. We are using this load save game function, and not really. We need to find the read save game function, which tries to open the file. So it checks if the file exists, which is the save game file plus slot.toString, which we don't need. This is the Fumiko save game system that we are trying to get past, and it will check if our load save game. So we need to check if the save game method is the save game method single file, because we are only implementing that for now. And if our I need to wait. I don't like how I use the directory thing there. So let's comment this out. And I want to have a function called public string get directory. Whoops. Great at typing today. Typing today. And if we are trying to get a directory, we want to have a condition, and if the condition doesn't happen, we are returning nothing. And if the directory is a local application data, we are going to return this folder here. So we can now do this properly and add get directory local application data plus file name, which gives us a proper path to our directory and gives us an easy way of creating these strings which will just be like this home test local share save games, or Infectious void in this case. And we want to use this here again. That's why I created special place for that. So if file exists, get directory local application data plus savegame.bin. We can use a private string, which will be our save game file name. And this will be savegame.bin. Oops. And use this here again. Okay, and if this file exists, we want to create a new binary formatter. We want to create a save game stream and open this file, which will be string save game file, which will be which will be the content of this one. Okay, we want the save game, not the dir, we want the file, and we want the save game. We want data to be data save game binary deserialize save game stream, and we want to close the stream afterwards. So data is this class, which is just called data because the name was free and it sounds good, and it contains our save games, autosaves and settings. And that way we can actually load save games on start, which is kind of cool. But it will just read the save game binary. Or get save game, load save games. So this is just a naming issue. If you have like multiple different types of, if you name it get save games, you can either have a void which is get save games which returns a single save game or the save games as an object for you to use them in a script, or you have get save games to actually load the data from your hard drive or from an API. And you have also, if you name it like load save games, it should actually be the void which loads a save game for the game. So I don't know, I'll just name this load save game binary, or load save game, load data. Let's just call this load data. It doesn't matter. And if we have the load save games, or if we load save game, actually, we want to have a save game, and we want to be able to load that one. And if we are loading a save game, what we are doing is we want this scene manager to load a scene which will be save current level, and then we want to iterate. Sorry. To iterate through the restorable objects. And and for each restorable object the restorable objects, let's call that one U, for the reason that we are now creating a second one, which will be 0 lower than. We need to find the restorable objects again, which will be that snippet. Oops. Wow. Okay. It didn't like that copy. We need to just get these 3 lines. We don't need to have that one. Luckily in Godly Core I don't have to worry about saving and serialization. Every level scene is pretty much a new save point. Yeah, that's kinda how I did it in Fumiko too. But it stumbled. I stumbled with it. It fell on my feet because I wanted to make bigger levels, longer levels with checkpoints, and then I had to manually restore everything by adding scripts that were checking if a specific switch was set, and if it was set, then it would disable certain game objects and move the player to a new location. And this wasn't pretty, and creating new content like that isn't fun. So we are now finding again our restorable objects in the scene. We will find the restorable objects container, and we don't need to make that fail proof, because if we don't find that container we might as well call an exception, because this needs to exist all the time, and or at least every time we want to load or write save games. And then we are getting the components in children, and it will be for int I equals 0, I equals restorable objects in scene length. We are going through each restorable object that we saved and checking if the save restorable objects u dot uid equals restorable objects in scene I uid, no, settings uid, and if it does, we have a match, and then we can give the restorable object in scene y. We can set that to be equal our save restorable objects, but I won't do that because it's dangerous, and it also doesn't work. It would be like this one. No, it doesn't. Of course, settings. We now have the issue, if we are saving this to a file, it's okay. We can just copy and use these things. But since we have loaded the data into a list of save games, and the save game contains a list of restorable object settings And if we are using this to set the settings of an existing object to the ones in the save game, it won't create a new object, it will be the same one on each side. And if we are going to change the settings later, it will automatically change in the save game. And then we might make changes to our existing save games that we actually didn't want to make. And for that I need to create a new restorable object settings, and the restorable object settings has these values. It has an active bool, save.active, no, not save, save restorable objects u. Maybe I would need to restorable objects in scene. I will create a restorable object settings save game. Wow. Restorable, saved restorable equals save restorable objects u. Just to make it a bit more pretty. So if saved restorable is active, we want this to be true or false. So that I do that because I really don't want these objects to be able to influence each other. And if I write it like that, it will use a new Boolean value for that instead of using an existing one. So, and we can do that for the stored position, which will be a new vector2. No, this will be save use stored position. We don't need to set that, or do we? Oops. If stored position equals our saved restorable stored position, but only if if we are actually using this position, but we might not. I don't know what I did there with if restorable settings restore position. Oh, okay. Okay, apply. Initialize. Settings, use stored position. Settings stored position. Okay, okay. Okay. So this is a bit tricky because I wanted this use stored position to be independent from the save game. So we are not doing that. No. We are using restorable objects in scene. I apply saved restorable settings. So what was that? It was store position. Okay, so this is a different thing. So we have two different functions for that. And we can do that here and just apply it with that function. So if we are getting restorable settings, we don't have a stored position if use stored position. But that's not what we want to use. We want that to be if our settings are saying use stored position. And we don't need that. To make this more clear, this was a function that was meant to override these settings, and this is a function that is used to load settings from the save game and use them, which will be bound to different conditions. So if we... this doesn't look good. So if we are using the stored position, then we are telling our game object to use a new vector2 restorable settings, stored position x, and this isn't really beautiful. I'm sorry for this small window. We want to have a new vector2 with these two in there, and we want the target of our restorable object to move to our stored position. And if active, so okay, store activation state, so this is something different. If the restorable settings are active, then we want our settings active to be true. And if it isn't, we want our settings to be false. Again, I don't want to equal them. I don't want to connect them in any way. And it also means that we are going to set our target game object set, which is already a game object. Our target will be set active true. Oops. And our target will be set active false. What doesn't actually matter. We don't actually have to do that at all. We are going to apply these apply loaded settings. We are just going I will see if maybe I will do this other thing in a different way. we are going to apply these loaded settings, and this initialize function should wait for our save game to be loaded or not. So if our manager's persistent data tells us that it is finished loading save game data, then we can start initializing our objects, and so we might use manager's execution for that. So I'm sorry if this is currently a bit tricky. I want to make sure that things are done well and done as I want them to be later. So I have this singleton which tells me if a specific execution is allowed based on an execution set. So if I think I shouldn't have errors, so Unity should compile it correctly. No, it doesn't. A restorable object does not contain a definition for apply. Of course it doesn't, but triggered action hasn't realized that it got renamed. So if I check, it already has override settings. So let's just re-import them. Tween is assigned, player sprite is assigned, and this is annoying. Let's just it already has so this is a Unity thing. I don't really like the re-import, or not. Maybe I will do the refresh button sometimes, and still this is really new. It doesn't realize when renaming things with Visual Studio Code, it doesn't realize that things actually got fixed. So is there still an apply in there? There is. Okay, no, but it is in there for a different object. So I will close this. Let's just re-import all. Great. I actually want to avoid having to use that, and it probably was a mistake. Re-import all is like such a... It does so much, and it does way more than we actually wanted to. So now we have to sit here and wait. So how are you doing? How is your day? What are your plans for the evening? Do you want to sit here and watch a loading screen, or do you have something in mind that would actually be fun and enjoyable? It's almost finished, but not yet. I'm not even sure if it actually fixes anything. Sometimes I think Unity is acting weird, and then it's me myself. Almost there. Yeah, it's finished. But it's still, the issue persists, and maybe my eyes are acting out, because last time I looked, it's called override settings, and no one is trying to use apply, but I haven't really looked at the line. Well, it is this line. It also tells me that it doesn't have a definition for apply, while it is override settings now. I don't know what it is with Visual Studio Code, and why Unity would wait for Visual Studio Code to get its shit together to recompile. Okay, let's do this here too, instead of apply loaded settings. Wow. And it magically went away. We did it, guys! We fixed it. And now we can continue where we left off, and I actually have forgotten where we were. We have the apply loaded settings, and we were here, somewhere here, and we wanted, okay, so I'm back. We have the manager's execution, and what I wanted to do is go into singletons manager's execution and add a new this was a thing. Oh, of course. We want to duplicate that, and we have a new execution set which is loading, and if we are loading, we want to be able to use reading data and nothing else. I'm not sure if that system works that well, so you poor people can't see what I'm doing here. I have these execution sets, and it will be loading default and paused, and while I'm paused I can only store, read, and use input, and while I'm loading I can only read data and maybe do some calculations, but I don't know yet. And if it's default I can do all these things, and while I might want to have these things in calculation or interaction, or I will just add a new one. Initialization. I hope this is the correct use of that word. And if initialization is allowed, usually I see the messages that you send me on Discord, but I will take a look in a minute. So we want to start by loading, and we want the restorable object to only initialize. if our execution initialization is allowed. Okay. So at that point we are starting our game now with the execution set loading. Okay. Did you see the message about interviews? How long until the next segment of the stream? I will see. I'm currently making some progress here, so it might take some time. And the interviews, yeah, it's cool. It's cool. I'm not sure if I currently am in the mood to do something like that. But it's cool. It's nice. I had two interviews with really nice people who contacted me, and it's a cool experience and gives good exposure. So we want load data. If you would have known some things you know now at the start of coding games with Unity, what comes to your mind first? Could you rephrase that? I don't really mean what you want me to answer to that. Probably something like I can copy my code from my other game. Oh, it's awesome. It's amazing. If you already made one game, you never have to make another game again. You can just reuse it. It's fantastic. Okay. So we have the loaded data, and if loaded data is true, we want to have a public bool or maybe put that in manager's execution. It's not too pretty, but if we are calling that we want the current execution set to be get set by name, execution set. Oh, okay, it's execution set names default. Maybe something like that. Maybe I will do some kind of event system which sets the execution set to something based on the current condition or current state of the game. So, okay, the current execution set is just a thing. Okay, we'll just set it to execution set names default then. So if we are finished with that, we can call manages execution instance loaded data. And then we should be able to first load our save games. And if we finished loading our save games, we will be able to initialize our objects. Wow. Okay, and this is only loaded data. After we loaded data, we want to load our save game. Okay. Oof. Wow, so this is really creating a big tail of things I need to care about. What's a Unity feature you would have liked to know right from the start? Since I'm starting with it, I tend to feel a bit overwhelmed. Many different things. I can tell you one really cool trick. If you have this, if you have an array of elements, let me quickly go to this nice little interactable object, and it has this is wrong. Yeah, of course it doesn't work, but well, okay, if you have like an array of cool things like these elements, so which is like a normal array for Unity. If you tell it to write, if you write public and then you give it an array, it gets shown in the inspector like this. And if you have a big array like 28 objects in there, and then you want to reduce it, you don't have to like reorder them all. And if you right click on it, you can just duplicate it or delete an array element, and this is really nice. And I think in previous Unity versions you needed to hold down Shift, and I wanted to present you that secret, but they already made it a bit more easy to access. So if you right click on arrays in the inspector, you can delete elements. And another thing that is really good to have is take a look at the player settings. But not the player settings, but something even more important, which is the editor. But this is also something that they just made the default now. So you have the asset serialization, and it needs to be force text if you want to use it with Git, because elsewise your levels won't be. They will only be big binary blobs for your version control system. So make sure it's set to force text. Something else. I mean, things just come over time. Don't overthink. In the beginning, it's nice to just make progress by just trying things out. The biggest thing, or the biggest help you can get for yourself, is having a version control system like it to actually not lose progress and be able to experiment. And for that to be useful, you will find something on Google really quick. Okay, this is the wrong path, I know. Unity 3D. You can find something on Google really quick. Like if you're using Git, you have to use Git ignore files, and this is like a good example for a default Git ignore file, and you should use that. Or it's actually made from Fumiko, so you don't need to, if you have this, you don't need these save games or backup stuff for game settings. But things like the object folder, the temp folder, the library folders, these are all things Unity creates temporarily, and if you check out your project on a different PC, you don't need that, because Unity will just recreate it. You can also exclude things like your VS Code folder if you want to, or your idea folder if you're using some other something from JetBrains. And if you use something like Vim, you can exclude the SVP files which are created, the swap files, which are the cached temporary files. So these are nice things to have. Remember to put your objects into parent objects so that you can move them around more easily. And if you move the scene somewhere else, they should have a proper position dependent in relationship with the 0 position. This is something nice. Try to use, or what I really like to use, is singletons, like really easy singletons, because most of the time you don't need something very complicated to have your a special game manager. You create a game object called singletons, and then you attach scripts to it, and you also attach a script to it which basically just contains and a don't destroy unload on awake. This gives the game object, which Unity will draw it out from the scene, and you will have them in a special section. And if you change the scene to somewhere else, it doesn't get removed. So you always can keep your hero. So this is really cool to have don't destroy unload. I didn't use that feature for Fumiko, but I will now use it for Infectious Void, because it's much easier to just move your hero to a new position. Like if I set him here, he dies. And that's what I wanted to show you. He will just die. No, if I want to move him, if I just set him somewhere, it's easier to do that instead of having to, like in Fumiko, I had this hero object in every scene and it was a prefab, and then I moved it to a correct position, and when I changed the scene I had to like initialize the whole thing and find my hero again, and find my hitboxes again, or other things that I needed to reuse, and this can cause a lot of issues. So if you just keep your hero with everything he has, you can keep all these settings he currently has and just move him to a new position. And that's why I keep these hitboxes that I create in a special box, because when I change the scene I can check, or I can just delete the ones that aren't used anymore, instead of losing them all and maybe someone is still doing an action trying to find this hitbox and then it can't. So this is a really nice feature. Don't destroy and load. And together with singletons, if you have an object called singletons, which doesn't get destroyed and load, and you attach scripts to it that you only need this small snippet here. You tell it to have a public static manages game, which is the name of your class, called instance. And in your awake function, you want to check if the instance equals not null. This is only to destroy duplicates, but this is more important. If you want, if it awakes, you want to set the instance to this, and that way you create a singleton from it. So this is just to make sure that I don't have two objects called singletons. It doesn't let me duplicate it. This is okay, but if I have to, what should happen? So I don't think that is. So in this case, it has deleted the first one, and the second one still exists. So, this is just something that singletons can do, like care about if they have duplicates and remove the duplicates. But you should, in general, you should have one singleton. Okay, so it is kind of cool. If you load another scene and it also has a singleton, it deletes the second singleton, and this allows you to load every scene independently from each other. So it's okay. It's good to have that. So if you put this here, what it gives you is the opportunity to use it from every script you have. Like if I want to access the manages game class, and I want to, manages game maybe is a bad example for that, because I haven't rewritten that yet. So player interfaces is such a singleton, for example. And if I have a triggered action and I want the player I want to change something about it, then I can just use player interfaces .instance, and then I can have access to all the things that it has, the actions, the calculations, the attributes, and the components. And I can access all the things that I put in there. And this is really nice to have for something like a game manager, or if you have, I like to have something like, or I can show it if I take a look at what Fumiko had in the end. It had a manager's game. It should have had a manager's menu and manager's save games. And you also need something like manager's sound. Maybe if you want manager's time. Manager's UI is also really nice to put that inside like a singleton, which allows you to just call UI elements whenever you want. And manages animation if you want, manages camera, manages player, manages movement if you want, manages input is really nice. So if you have an input manager, you can make it care about like the update function, scan the input, and set the mouse states and compute the input values depending on your operating system and if the input is allowed and things like that. So I would highly advise to make use of these kinds of possibilities to explore that further. And there are different ways of doing that, but in general, having this is nice. Okay. I have written so much stuff today, and all I want to is actually be able to write and load my save game. For that, I need to trigger load data, and it gets triggered. And if that is triggered, loaded data, it automatically initializes, but it doesn't load a save game, which is fine. Interestingly, my interactable object, my sword, just was completely killed by something I did. It just lost its ability to talk to me. So we have the interaction text tuple. It doesn't have... Interesting. Oops. It doesn't use anything of that. It had one action. Oh, this is so bad. I don't know why it did that. It changes the player appearance to shadow, but it doesn't need to because it increases the illness. It shakes the camera with an earthquake, and it writes to restorable, deactivating it, and it adds a save game, and it writes a save game, and it emits particles from particle system pickup, and it emits roughly about 200 particles, and it locks. It doesn't need to lock an interactable object, maybe, and it deactivates the renderer, and it should play a sound called dissolve, and it uses its own its own restorable object. So okay, I think that was my sword. I really don't know why it forgot about that. So if I take it, I die. I just die. And a triggered action doesn't like what I'm doing. It tells me that at 274 I have another reference exception, so we will just remove the sound for now. Okay, this is fine. And it didn't complain about anything. So what I want to check is local share Infectious. We don't have that. We only have the Unity 3D folder. So there was nothing written to our local share. So we are not yet writing any save games to actual files. Okay, write file, write the blob. I don't know why it puts Unity there. Okay. So I am trying to write it too, and I have found the correct folder, so it should work, but it doesn't write anything, which is kind of strange. Serialize takes an object, which is okay. File name. Wait. This would just write it to the infectious void folder, which it did. So there's our save game. So the issue was that instead of using the complete path to write, it just used the file name, and then it lands just in your Unity folder. So we want to have file to write, and then we want to write that. And save game file. So here we did it correctly. So, okay, and this should have written our save game bin, which is just a binary that we can't look at. But it's nice. Oh, we can look at it a bit, because it isn't. I haven't done much with it, so we can actually see some things. It's the save games. It has the player position. It has the writing date and our restorable objects with our UID, and now we would be able to load all this, but since loading a save game is still like another blob to achieve, mainly because I need to keep some other things like the player appearance and initialize some things. I want to make my commit. And push this. I can now git push and git push back up. This is also something I would highly incentivize. If you, well, it's something I do. I have a server at home which keeps my Git repositories and a private Bitbucket repository, and one is origin and the other one is just called backup. And then I, instead of doing just git push, I do git push backup. So if at some point this place burns down or one copy gets lost, server crashes, lots of data, I can always use this real backup. I would really recommend having this. And it's easy. You would just say git add. Normally, if you add an origin, you would say git add origin, and then you say git add servername.com Unity projects project name, something like that, I think. And you would just change that to git add backup and then git add. So it's really easy, and then you can just use git push backup. It's amazing. So I have now finished my work for today, despite not being finished. But I'm tired, and I will turn off the stream now. This has one reason, and it's because last time I didn't, and then I had a 7-hour long stream after I went gaming for some hours, and when I wanted to copy that to YouTube, I had this big file, so I will turn it off now. I don't think that I will. I'm not sure yet if I play something today, so if I do, you will see me go online again in a while, and then I will play some games. But if I don't be mad at me. This was our development stream for today, and I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for everyone who came by. I will try to make these more reliably and more frequently, but for now I'm happy that I made this one. So everyone counts, and I wish you all a pleasant evening if we don't see each other in a short time. Goodbye, and thank you for watching.